My iron pan hit the old stone road before I did. My field chest landed beside it, burst open, and scattered 3 knives through the rain. Captain Jaster Helm leaned from the back of the warded wagon. "Weight limit," he said. "The cook stays." The rear axle had cracked during our retreat from Nithrin Deep. According to the driver, the next hill would snap it unless the wagon lost at least 200 pounds. 3 crates of monster cores remained tied beneath the canvas roof. At 24, I understood the calculation. The cores were worth more than I was. I gathered my knives from the mud. The nearest outpost is 2 days south. You know the road. The road crosses hunting territory. You still have your butcher knife. My knife works best after the biting stops. Jaster struck the wagon frame. Vespera Rake stepped down beside me. Her boots landed lightly on the wet stones. A short rain cloak covered her fitted green-black hunting armor, and her long black braid rested across her back. Only 3 arrows remained in the quiver at her hip. She was 25 and the strongest field hunter left in the 9 Torches Company. Jastor's expression tightened. "Get back on." "No, you cannot protect dead weight with 3 arrows." Vespera looked past him at the core crates. "He kept me breathing when your healer had no antidote. He fed 9 people after you cut loose the ration sled." Her pale gray eyes returned to Jaster. "He also warned you the burrowers were fleeing upward. The claw marks below had all pointed toward the surface. Creatures that normally defended their tunnels had abandoned them without feeding, nesting, or fighting. Something deeper inside Nithrin had frightened them. Jaster had ordered us to keep collecting cores." Vespera removed the black iron badge from her shoulder. "I believe him." She dropped the badge into the mud. Jaster glanced at the wounded guards beneath the canvas. Vespera noticed the movement. Her hand remained near her bow, but she did not draw. If she killed Jaster and frightened the driver, the damaged wagon could overturn with the injured men inside. "At the next outpost, I will register both of you as deserters," Jaster said. "Then stop wasting daylight." The driver snapped the reins. The wagon rolled south with our food medicine blankets and the people I had helped keep alive. Vespera crouched and returned my knives to the field chest. "You did not have to stay." "I know." "Why did you?" "Because you saved my life. Because your warning was right." She closed the chest. "And because I will not trade a person for cargo." Stone scraped behind us. Vespera handed me my pan, slipped her bow from her shoulder, and nocked an arrow. Nithrin Gate sealed the dungeon beneath 2 cracked towers. Fallen masonry covered part of the black iron arch, leaving a narrow gap below it. Something pushed against that gap. Dust rolled down the steps. A hooked claw appeared. A second claw tore an iron strip from the stone. A broad skull forced into the open air. 4 pale eyes blinked along a jaw covered in overlapping gray plates. A slate burrower. Nearly 300 pounds of tunneling muscle and stone-breaking teeth. It twisted one shoulder through the gap. Vespera drew to her cheek and released. The arrow entered its smallest eye and vanished to the feathers. The monster dropped before its second foreleg cleared the gate. 2 arrows, she said. I approached the carcass. Fresh gouges crossed its rear plates. They were too deep and narrow to have come from scraping against rock. My warning had been right. Our empty stomachs mattered first. Help me turn it over. Vespera looked at the gray slime leaking from its jaw. You intend to eat it. Only the parts that will not stop our hearts. Together we rolled the carcass onto its armored back and dragged it beneath the ruined checkpoint roof. The main room held an old cooking pit beneath a cracked smoke vent. A shattered eastern window and several low gaps opened toward the outer foundation stones. My field chest contained 3 nesting pots, 3 stoppered ceramic jars, a wooden spoon salt, fire steel wire cloth filters rendered fat waxed canvas, and my knives. Jaster had left me a kitchen because none of it looked valuable. I built a fire while Vespera lifted a fallen roof beam and braced it across the door. Rainwater streamed through a break in the roof. I placed my smallest pot beneath it, filtered what I collected, and brought it to a boil. A swollen blue bile sac rested behind the slate burrower's jaw. One careless cut would ruin most of the meat and possibly kill us. I removed it first. 2 pale pressure organs sat beneath the creature's lower jaw. I peeled away their poisonous gray membranes and placed the clean white centers inside the boiling water. What do those do? Vespera asked. They feel movement through stone. Have you eaten them before? No. I prepared them for an alchemist. Did he survive? He paid me. Vespera continued watching my knife. I cracked open the creature's sternum with my cleaver. and removed a bright blue core from between its ribs. The intact core went beside the pan. I sliced the pressure organs into thin coils, then added them to rendered fat with salt and 2 strips of flank meat. The smell of rain and monster blood slowly gave way to roasting meat. I divided the cooked meat across 2 scrubbed pieces of flat slate. Vespera accepted hers but left it untouched. You first. The meat tasted like strong boar with a dry mineral edge. The pressure organ was firm and crisp around its surface. I finished every piece. Heat spread from my stomach into my chest. Golden words appeared above the pan. Living feast awakened. Awakening condition fulfilled. First complete monster meal prepared and consumed, while its intact mature core remained present. Slate burrower meal completed. Permanent adaptation acquired burrower strength 1. Core linked trait acquired, fault sense 1. Detect movement through connected stone within 12 paces. Integration consumes food, water, minerals, and rest. The blue core beside the pan faded to lifeless gray. That explained why this had never happened before. I had eaten monster meat during previous expeditions, but never while its intact core remained beside the meal. Companies removed and sealed every valuable core before their cooks received the carcasses. Jaster had abandoned me with the first complete monster no one had stripped apart for profit. My forearms cramped. My fingers tightened around the slate plate until a crack ran beneath my thumb. Vespera rose immediately. What happened? The meal changed me. Explain. Stronger muscles. Stronger joints. Something called fault sense. I set down the cracked plate and lifted my heavy cleaver. The blade felt noticeably lighter. I pressed one palm against the stone floor. Cold rock touched my skin. Then the checkpoint filled with movement I could not see. Rain tapped against the outer steps. Water flowed somewhere beneath the eastern wall. Vespera's weight traveled through the foundation whenever she shifted her boots. A heavier vibration rose from below us. Fast! Move! I lunged across the fire and struck Vespera's shoulder. We rolled away together. The old cooking pit exploded. A second slate burrower erupted through the floor, scattering coals, broken stone, and the remains of our meal. Its jaws snapped shut where Vespera's leg had been. She planted one boot against its cheek. One hunting knife entered the seam behind its upper eye. The second drove upward beneath its skull. Vespera twisted both blades. The slate burrower struck the floor once and stopped moving. She pulled the knives free. How did you know? I felt it through the stone. Vespera looked at my hand against the floor. Fault sense. I nodded. Several smaller vibrations moved beyond the sealed gate, but they were retreating deeper into Nithrin. Vespera had not needed me to kill the creature. She had needed one warning. The attack had destroyed our cooking pit, but it had also opened a narrow stone channel beneath the floor. Water glimmered at the bottom. I touched the channel wall and followed the steady vibration east. A collapsed storage room stood beyond the main hall. A heavy cabinet covered most of its rear wall. Vespera set down her bow. Move. She dragged the cabinet aside alone. A round iron lid appeared beneath the fallen plaster. Cold air rose when we lifted it. I tied a cloth filter over my smallest pot, lowered it with wire, and drew up clear water. The shaft was lined with intact stone, and the iron lid sealed tightly over its mouth. A narrow side alcove shared the cistern's cold air, but stood behind a raised threshold. A drainage groove sloped from the alcove toward the outer wall, safely away from the water shaft. We can hang meat in there, I said. Nothing touches the cistern. Vespera examined the floor and nodded. She retrieved her bow and slung it across her shoulder before we returned to the main room. We built a new fire ring beside the ruined pit and boiled the first pot of water. You were right to take my warning seriously, I said. I did not remain because of the warning alone. I looked at her. Vespera tightened the cord around one knife sheath. I said you were worth remaining with. She returned to the carcasses before I found a useful answer. I cut more flank meat from the first slate burrower and cooked it without another pressure organ. Vespera ate after I tested the first piece. When I finished my portion, a smaller line of gold appeared. Monster meal completed. Minor permanent adaptation stamina and muscle recovery increased. This carcass's remaining adaptive essence has fallen sharply. Further meals may divide the remaining essence, but cannot increase its total. The warmth that followed was weaker than my first transformation, but it settled into my body and remained. Vespera watched my face. Another improvement, smaller but permanent, so every meal matters. I looked at the remaining carcass differently after that. We spent the next several hours turning both monsters into supplies. Vespera pulled her first arrow from the dead slate burrower's eye. The steel head remained straight, but the shaft had split near the feathers. I split wet tendon into narrow fibers and wrapped them around the cracked arrow shaft with clear resin taken from the base of a digging claw. The tendon would shrink and tighten as it dried. Vespera placed the repaired arrow beside the fire. Her two untouched arrows remained in her quiver. We wired slate plates across the lowest gap in the outer door. The digging claws became hooks. Some meat hung beneath the smoke vent, while the rest went into the cold alcove several paces from the sealed cistern. I stretched wire across the broken window and tied loose chips of slate to it. Anything entering would rattle them. The first core remained dull gray. The second slate burrower's core still shone inside its chest. By late afternoon, food and water had restored most of the energy consumed by my first inheritance. Vespera caught me looking toward the second carcass. You intend to try again. The first core gave me false sense. The marrow may strengthen the body it came from. The first meal cracked a plate. That is why I prepared. 2 pots of boiled water waited beside the fire. I mixed salt into one and placed ordinary cooked meat within reach. For the inheritance meal, I chose the second slate burrower's pressure organ's dense flank muscle and marrow from its rear leg. I removed its bright core and placed it beside the pan. Vespera sat close enough to take the food away. If your hands stop working, I feed you the ordinary meat. Agreed. I ate slowly. The marrow softened the meat's mineral taste. The pressure organs remained unpleasantly firm. The core's blue light weakened as I swallowed the final bite. Golden words returned. Slate burrower meal completed. Burrow arrow strength advanced to stage 2. Core linked trait evolved fault sense 2. Range increased to 18 paces. Hollow spaces, unstable stone, and pressure fractures can now be detected. Compatible organ branch acquired stone frame un. Bone density and impact resistance increased. Integration demand severe. The core turned gray. Pressure closed around my spine. Every vibration in the foundation struck me at once. Rain hammered the steps. Water moved below the cistern. Wind shifted the damaged gate. Creatures scraped through distant tunnels. My legs folded. Vespera caught me beneath the arms before my head reached the wall. She lowered me onto the waxed canvas and brought the salted water to my mouth. Drink. My hands shook too badly to hold the cup. She kept it steady while I swallowed, then pushed strips of ordinary meat into my fingers. Hunger cramped my stomach despite the meal I had just finished. I ate until the pressure separated into distinct layers. It took nearly an hour for my heartbeat to slow and my legs to hold me again. The new strength remained. My coat pulled tighter across my shoulders. My muscles felt denser, and the stone beneath my knees no longer punished them as sharply. Vespera pressed 2 fingers against my neck until the shaking stopped. The first meal cracked a plate, she said. The second put you on the floor. I noticed. No second inheritance without water, salt, ordinary food, and someone present. Agreed. She helped me stand, then stepped back and watched my balance. Vespera could still defeat me before I drew my knife. I was no longer helpless in a fight beside her. A series of light impacts crossed the buried foundation stones outside. I raised one hand. Vespera went still. 3 creatures, I whispered. East side. They followed the blood. She collected her 2 good arrows, but left the repaired one drying beside the fire. Positions? 1 at the broken window, 2 spreading along the wall. Vespera smothered most of the fire beneath loose ash. The room darkened. She took position beside the window with one hunting knife drawn, leaving her other hand free. The first creature pushed its head through the broken frame. Its hairless gray body stayed low to the ground. Long forelimbs ended in hooked digits, and 2 hollow fangs glistened inside its divided mouth. A rift maw scavenger. Vespera caught its jaw with her free hand and drove the knife beneath its skull. The creature sagged across the window ledge. She ripped the blade free. The second rift maw moved along the outer wall. Fault sense followed each claw through the connected stone. It turned toward a narrow break near the floor behind me. I have the second, I said. Vespera turned toward the third creature without looking back. She trusted me. I gripped my long butcher knife in both hands and positioned the point beside the broken stone. The vibration accelerated. The rift maw burst through the gap. Its fangs opened toward my thigh. I stepped aside before its full weight entered the room and drove the blade upward beneath its jaw. The creature struck my chest and carried me into the wall. Pain spread across my ribs. Nothing broke. Stone frame had absorbed the worst of the impact. The rift maw twisted violently. Burrower strength kept my hands locked around the handle. I forced the blade deeper until the point entered its brain. The body went limp against me. I pushed it aside and remained on my feet. Outside, the third rift maw turned away. Vespera dropped her bloodied knife, swung her bow from her shoulder, knocked one of her arrows, drew to her cheek, and released. The arrow entered the back of the fleeing creature's skull. It fell on the old stones beneath the muddy road. Vespera retrieved her dropped knife before crossing to me. She placed one palm against the bruise forming beneath my coat. Breathe? I obeyed. Her fingers moved carefully over my ribs. Nothing broken, I said. I will decide that. After one final check, she stepped back and looked at the dead rift maw near my boots. You waited for its weight to shift. I knew where it would emerge. You also knew where to place the knife. I have opened enough skulls. Vespera gave a small nod. You are learning to make them stop moving first. We recovered her arrow outside. Its shaft remained straight. By sunset, she again had 2 good arrows and 1 repaired arrow hardening beside the fire. I opened the rift maw I had killed. Black venom filled the glands above its hollow fangs. An enlarged dark green liver rested behind the ribs wrapped in branching silver veins. Near the spine, a small amber node tightened whenever I pressed the hind leg muscles. The other 2 rift maws carried the same organs. Vespera crouched across from me. The liver filters its own venom. That is my best guess. And the amber organ? It stores force for sudden lunges. Her gaze moved toward my pan. You want to eat both? I want to understand both. That answer was close enough. I removed all 3 livers without damaging their silver veins. The venom glands went into stoppered ceramic jars while the amber nodes were wrapped separately. Only the rift maw I had killed held a mature amber core. The other 2 contained dull, underformed stones that gave off no light. I set the mature core beside the pan. Then I cut a small portion of clean rear leg meat from that same mature core rift maw, far from its venom channels, and cooked it without adding either special organ. The core remained bright when I finished eating. A short message appeared. Rift maw meal completed. Minor permanent adaptation reaction speed increased. Core-linked inheritance remains available. The change was subtle. Vespera tossed me the wooden spoon without warning. My hand caught it before it struck my chest. She looked at the spoon, then at me. Useful. Very. I preserved the mature core rift maw's remaining meat and special organs for a proper inheritance meal. For dinner, I cooked enough safe meat from one of the underformed core rift maws for both of us. A faint warmth followed my portion. My reactions sharpened by another small degree, and the improvement remained. The untouched amber core still shone beside the pan. Whatever stronger traits waited inside that species would require the correct organ and another risk. I sealed the livers inside my cleanest pot and carried them into the raised cold alcove. The venom jars and amber nodes went onto a separate stone shelf. By midnight, the ruined checkpoint no longer felt abandoned. Slate armor covered the lower door. The wire warning line crossed the broken window. Meat smoked beneath the vent. The cistern remained sealed, and our remaining food hung safely inside the cold alcove. Vespera took the first watch. She spread the folded waxed canvas near the fire and placed her cloak over me. You cook tomorrow, she said. Sleep. You need rest too. Wake when I tell you. Halfway through the night she did. The repaired arrow had tightened as the tendon dried. I checked the binding, returned it to her quiver, and took her place at the doorway. Vespera lay down with one knife in her hand. Fault Sense moved quietly through the checkpoint. Water flowed beneath the cistern. Wind pressed against the damaged gate. Several slate burrowers traveled deeper inside Nithrin away from the surface. Near dawn, an uneven rhythm crossed the old stones beneath the muddy road. One person, the right foot landed normally, the left dragged behind it. I woke Vespera. We stepped outside as a lone hunter emerged between the wet trees. His leather armor had been torn across one shoulder. A broken spear remained clenched in his right hand. Two narrow punctures marked his left forearm. Black veins had already spread beyond his elbow. The spacing matched the rift maw fangs. He saw Vespera first, then the smell of smoked meat reached him. His knees struck the road. A small coin purse slipped from his fingers. "Food," he whispered. "Please." I knelt beside him and watched the black veins creep toward his shoulder. At that rate, the poison might reach his chest within an hour. Our first guest had arrived with money, an empty stomach, and the same venom carried by the monsters inside our cold alcove. His best chance was the riftmaw liver I had never cooked before. Vespera caught the hunter beneath the arms before his face struck the road. I slid one arm beneath his knees and lifted. Burrower strength made a grown man feel lighter than the supply crates I had carried through Nithrin. We brought him inside and laid him on the waxed canvas beside the fire. Vespera's cloak still rested across my shoulders from the night before. She pulled it free, folded it beneath the hunter's head, and cut open the sleeve around his wounded arm. Two deep punctures marked the flesh below his wrist. Black veins had already crossed his elbow. Vespera reached for one of her knives. "Do not cut it." The venom entered through the bite. "It has already spread too far. Opening the wound now will only make him bleed." She returned the knife to its sheath. "What do you need?" "Boiled water. The smallest filtering liver. My narrow knife." Vespera moved immediately. I pressed 2 fingers against the hunter's neck. His pulse struck rapidly, paused, then returned weaker. The poison had not reached his heart yet. It was close enough. Vespera brought the clean pot from the cold alcove. 3 dark green riftmaw livers rested inside it. The largest belonged to the mature core creature and had thicker silver veins running through its flesh. I left that one untouched. One of the smaller livers would have to save him. The outer lobes had darkened where the organ trapped venom from the riftmaw's blood. I cut those sections away. The previous night I had packed all 3 venom glands into 2 stoppered jars. The third jar remained clean. I sealed the contaminated liver tissue inside it. The organ's center remained deep red beneath its silver veins. I sliced it thin. Vespera held the hunter's arm steady while I rinsed the pieces in boiled water. "Will it work?" she asked. The liver protected the riftmaw from its own venom. That was not my question. I looked at the black veins creeping toward his shoulder. "I do not know." Vespera's expression did not change. "But it is the best chance he has." I minced the clean liver with a strip of safe riftmaw meat. A small piece of charcoal went into the pot to bind any free venom left in the tissue. I simmered everything in clean water with salt, then filtered the broth through folded cloth. The liquid emerged dark brown. Its sharp smell made my eyes water. The hunter stopped shivering. That frightened me more than the shaking had. His pulse weakened beneath my fingertips. "Lift him." Vespera sat behind the hunter and supported his shoulders against her chest. I brought the first spoonful to his mouth. His jaw remained clenched. Vespera pressed her thumb beneath it until his lips parted. I poured a few drops across his tongue. He swallowed once. The second spoonful came back out with a weak cough. Again, Vespera adjusted his head. I fed him a little at a time. His throat worked slowly. After the 6th spoonful, golden words appeared above the pot. First trait-focused dish served. Temporary trait granted to diner venom filter I. Expected duration 4 hours. Living feast function unlocked shared course. Properly prepared functional organs may grant temporary traits to other diners. After unlocking shared course, ordinary monster dishes may grant weaker temporary adaptations. Core linked inheritance remains exclusive to the bearer. The message vanished. The broth gave him something called venom filter, I said. It should last 4 hours. Vespera looked from me to the hunter's arm. You can grant other people temporary traits. If I prepare the correct part properly, the black veins stopped below his shoulder. For several breaths, nothing changed. Then the highest branch faded. A thin trail of black withdrew toward his elbow. He is responding. Vespera leaned closer. You are certain? His pulse is strengthening. I kept feeding him. Most of the liver broth disappeared 1 spoonful at a time. I kept 1 cup covered beside the fire in case the temporary filter weakened. Sweat gathered across his face. His breathing deepened, and the black veins slowly retreated below the elbow. It took nearly half an hour. When his pulse finally settled into a steady rhythm, I lowered his arm. Vespera eased him back onto her folded cloak. He will live? If the temporary filter lasts long enough for his body to clear the remaining venom. And if it does not, I use the cup I saved. If that fails, I prepare another liver. Only 2 filtering livers remained. One belonged to the mature core Riftmaw and was meant for my inheritance meal. The answer had a visible limit. Vespera studied the empty pot, the recovering hunter, and the coin purse still lying outside where he had dropped it. A resistance meal before entering Nithrin would be worth more than an antidote after a bite. She was already thinking beyond one patient. We still have no tables. Vespera glanced toward the broken cabinet and the scattered boards around it. We have wood. The hunter slept until full morning light reached the main hall. I cleaned the pot, sealed the discarded tissue, and inspected the rest of his injuries. The tear in his shoulder armor concealed a long scratch, but it had missed the artery. His left ankle had swollen badly from walking after the bite. Neither injury would kill him before breakfast. He opened his eyes while Vespera replaced the band around his arm. His hand moved toward the broken spear beside him. She placed 1 finger against its shaft. Do not. He released it. Where am I? Nithrin Gate. His eyes moved across the damaged walls, hanging meat and new fire ring. Then he looked at his arm. The black veins had retreated almost to the punctures. What did you give me? Part of the creature that poisoned you. He stared at me. That sounds worse than dying. You survived long enough to complain? His laugh became a cough. Vespera handed him water. He drank slowly. My name is Karis, he said. 32. Freelance trapper. He had cropped sand-colored hair, sun-browned skin, and a crooked nose that had healed badly years before. Kyan Doric. Vespera Reich, Vespera said. Karis looked at her bow, then at the 3 stripped Riftmaw carcasses beside the cold alcove. 3? Yes, I said. You killed all of them? 2 were hers. Vespera looked at me. The 3rd was his. Karis's shoulders loosened. Then the pack is gone. He reached weakly toward the doorway. I retrieved the coin purse and placed it in his hand. 4 silver coins and 17 coppers rested inside. Take it, he said. I kept 2 silver coins and returned the rest. 1 for the liver, 1 for the risk. A bottled antidote cost 10 silver at the outpost. I did not have a bottle. Karis closed his fingers around the remaining coins. His eyes returned to the empty bowl. If you can repeat that, every hunter working the outer floors will stop here. Vespera rested one hand on the back of a broken chair. They would also tell us what they saw below. She wanted information about the creatures fleeing Nithrin. I wanted grain tools and enough walls to survive another night. Feeding hunters could provide both. Karis tried to stand. His injured ankle failed immediately. Vespera caught his shoulder and pushed him back onto the canvas. My supply sled is half a mile north, he said, beside a split boulder. The Riftmaws attacked before I reached it. What is on the sled? I asked. 2 sacks of barley, 1 sack of dried beans, 6 onions, rope, a hatchet, an iron cooking grate, 2 blankets, 6 finished arrows, a pouch of nails. Every item solved a problem inside the gatehouse. "Bring it back," Karis said. "Half the food and 1 blanket are yours." Vespera looked toward the northern road. The grain will attract scavengers if the covering tore. The sled was under oilskin. Rift maws have claws. Karis lifted his broken spear. "I can guard the room. You can barely stand. I only need to remain behind the door." The slate-covered entrance warning wire and narrow window gave him a chance. We would be gone for less than an hour if the road remained clear. Before leaving, I prepared the mature Riftmaw's core-linked inheritance meal. 2 pots of water waited beside the fire. 1 contained salt. Ordinary cooked meat rested within reach. Vespera sat across from me. Karis watched from the waxed canvas. "You are eating another liver?" he asked. "The entire mature one. Why?" "The first monster meal changed my body permanently." Karis looked toward Vespera. She nodded once. He stopped questioning my judgment. I selected the mature Riftmaw's whole filtering liver, the amber node from beside its spine, and clean meat from its rear leg. The liver had protected it from venom. The amber node had stored force before each lunge. I sliced the node into thin pieces and cooked it slowly with the meat. The liver went into the pan last, so its silver veins remained intact. The mature amber core rested beside the fire. I finished the meal. Its light flowed inward and faded. Golden words appeared. Riftmaw core-linked meal completed. Minor reaction adaptations, consolidated Riftmaw reflex eye. Compatible organ trait acquired spring step eye. Store and release muscular force for short explosive movement. Compatible organ trait acquired venom filter eye. Resistance to Riftmaw venom high. Resistance to unfamiliar toxins partial. Integration demand moderate. Heat tightened around my calves and lower back. My heartbeat accelerated. Every movement inside the room became easier to follow. Vespera handed me the salted water before the shaking could begin. I drank and ate the ordinary meat. Pain ran through my legs, but I stayed upright. After several minutes, the tension settled into my muscles like a drawn bowstring. Only 1 untouched filtering liver remained in the cold alcove. Vespera stood and moved the chairs away from the center of the room. "Cross the room. That seems simple. Stop before touching the far wall." I bent my knees. The stored pressure released. The room blurred. I crossed 12 feet before I expected to move 3. Vespera caught the front of my coat and turned me aside. My shoulder missed the wall by inches. We stopped close enough for 1 loose strand of her black hair to brush my cheek. Her hand remained against my chest. "Fast," she said. I looked down at her fingers. "Controlled?" "No." She released me. On the second attempt, I crossed half the distance and stopped badly. On the third, I remained on my feet. Vespera stepped behind me before I could turn and tapped the back of my neck with the flat of her knife. "Stronger," she said. "Still predictable. I have owned the ability for 10 minutes. You wasted 9. Karis laughed from the floor. We left him with boiled water, the covered cup of liver broth, and my heavy cleaver. Vespera retrieved her cloak from beneath his head, shook it out, and fastened it behind her shoulders. Karis barred the reinforced door from inside. If anything enters, Vespera told him, use the cleaver before the spear. He looked at the blade. "I am a trapper. Today you are furniture with a weapon." We followed the old road north. Mud covered most of the paving stones, but the buried surface remained connected beneath it. Fault sense reached 18 paces around me. Vespera moved several steps ahead, reading shallow prints and bent grass that I would have missed. The Riftmaw tracks led toward the gatehouse. Karis had been right. The 3 we killed were the pack that had bitten him. Half a mile from Nithrin Gate, the road curved around a split gray boulder. The sled stood beyond it. Its oilskin cover had been torn aside. One of the 2 barley sacks lay ripped open across the stones. Something large ate from it. The creature resembled a wild boar covered in rust-red bristles. Its shoulders reached my chest, and a black spiral horn grew from the center of its armored brow. A low vibration rolled from the hollow horn. My teeth began to ache. Vespera crouched beside the boulder. Thrumhorn. The monster raised its head. Barley fell from its mouth. What does the horn do? The road began humming beneath my boots. That. Fault sense filled with violent noise. Every stone seemed to move at once. I lifted my hand from the ground. The ability had become useless. The Thrumhorn faced us. Its horn vibrated harder. Do not meet the charge head-on, Vespera said. Its skull is thicker than the gate. She knocked one of her good arrows. The Thrumhorn pawed the stones. Wait until it lowers its head. Move right. The creature charged. I released Spring Step. Too much force entered my legs. I shot past the path Vespera had given me and landed several paces farther than intended. The Thrumhorn missed. It turned much faster than a creature that size should have managed. Its horn pointed toward my ribs. Fault sense still gave me nothing but noise. I relied on my eyes. The Thrumhorn charged again. Vespera drew and released. Her arrow entered the rear knee as the creature pushed forward. The leg folded. Its charge broke sideways. I used Spring Step again. Pain tightened through both calves, but the burst carried me inside the arc of its horn. I drove my long butcher knife behind its front leg. The blade entered between two ribs. The Thrumhorn dragged me several feet across the stones. Burrower strength kept the handle from twisting out of my hands. I pushed the blade deeper toward its heart. The creature struck the road. Its horn continued vibrating against the stones. Vespera reached us first. She planted one boot behind its jaw and drove a curved knife through the base of its skull. The humming stopped. Silence returned so sharply that my ears rang. I pulled my knife free and sat beside the carcass. Both calves cramped. Vespera crouched in front of me. How many bursts? 2. Your legs disagree with a third? They had help reaching that conclusion. She pressed her thumb into the tight muscle below my knee. The cramp eased slowly. Spring Step is not ordinary running, she said. You cannot force every movement through it. The monster was trying to put a horn through me. That is why control matters. She stood and recovered the arrowhead. The shaft had snapped beneath the Thrumhorn's falling weight. Vespera wrapped the steel head and placed it inside her belt pouch. One good arrow, one repaired. I lifted the torn oilskin from Karis's sled. The second barley sack remained sealed. Most of the dried beans had survived inside their sack, and all 6 onions rested between 2 folded wool blankets. A coil of rope, a hatchet, an iron cooking grate, a leather pouch of nails, and 6 finished arrows were secured beneath the rear rail. Vespera checked each arrow shaft. All straight. Her quiver now held 8 usable arrows, 6 new, 1 original, and the repaired slate burrower shaft. The broken arrowhead went with our repair supplies. The Thrumhorn's carcass weighed more than everything else on the sled. Burrower strength let me drag its front half onto the runners, while Vespera lifted the hindquarters. A bright golden core glowed beneath its ribs. I left it inside the body. 1 core-linked inheritance in a morning was enough. We retied the torn oilskin, secured the carcass with rope, and turned south. I pulled the sled. Its runners sank into the mud, but my back and legs held. Vespera walked beside the trees with an arrow nocked. We reached Nithrin Gate before noon. Karis opened the door after Vespera called his name. He stood behind it with my cleaver in both hands. The black veins had disappeared from his arm. You found it. We found what ate your barley. He looked at the Thrumhorn tied across the sled. That animal has been stealing from the northern camp for a month. Vespera removed the arrow bundle. It will not steal again. Karis handed my cleaver back before examining the recovered supplies. He kept his bargain. 1 sealed sack of barley, half the beans, 3 onions, and 1 blanket became ours. Then he placed the rope hatchet, iron grate nails, all 6 arrows, and the torn oilskin beside them. Half the food was the bargain, I said. The rest is payment for the life you saved. You already paid 2 silver. That was for the meal. He tapped the tools. These are for making sure I lived long enough to digest it. I accepted the difference. The supplies changed the gatehouse before sunset. Vespera climbed onto the damaged roof and stretched Karis's oilskin beneath the worst gap. Karis passed nails upward while seated on the outer steps. I fitted the iron grate over the new fire ring. The broken cabinet became a low table after the hatchet removed its rotten legs. 3 intact boards became benches. The main room still had holes in 2 walls. It now had a dry cooking area, a usable table, 8 arrows, stored grain beans, clean water, and enough meat for several days. I butchered the thrumhorn last. Its spiral horn surrounded a thin, vibrating membrane connected to the skull. Thick muscles along the neck and inner ears protected the creature from its own resonance. The meat was dark and surprisingly clean. I cooked an ordinary portion while the untouched golden core remained inside the carcass beside the fire. Living Feast responded after I ate. Theorem horn meal completed. Minor permanent adaptation balance and resistance to disorientation increased. Core-linked inheritance remains available. The ringing in my ears faded. I prepared a larger pot for Vespera and Karis. When they finished eating, another message appeared. Shared course completed. Weak temporary adaptation granted to diner's balance stabilization. Expected duration 3 hours. Karis stood from the bench. His injured ankle still hurt, but his upper body no longer swayed when he placed weight on it. Vespera turned sharply and drew her bow toward the broken window. Her movement stopped exactly where she intended. That would help against another thrumhorn, she said. It could help on unstable bridges and narrow ledges too. Karis looked from the steaming pot to the empty liver broth bowl. You have poison resistance, balance food, clean water shelter, and a hunter who can kill anything reaching the door. Vespera lowered her bow. Almost anything. Karis placed 1 silver coin on the new table for dinner and a place beside the fire. Until we build a cot, the bench will have to serve. Fault Sense caught several footsteps on the buried road. 4 people approached from the north. Vespera moved to the doorway with her bow ready. Karis pushed himself upright. 4 hunters emerged between the trees, 3 men and a broad-shouldered woman. Their weapons remained drawn until they saw Karis standing beside us. Karis? The woman crossed the road first. Her eyes moved to the fading punctures on his arm. We found the blood. We thought you were dead. The cook stopped it, Karis said. She looked at me. Behind her, one of the men noticed the thrumhorn meat roasting above the fire. Karis tapped the empty bowl beside him. His food borrowed the Riftmaw's resistance. The venom never reached my chest. The newcomers entered slowly. The broad-shouldered woman placed a silver coin on the table. We descend tomorrow. A second hunter added his coin. The third followed. The 4th silver coin struck the wood last. Can you give all of us the same resistance before dawn? I looked toward the cold alcove. 4 hunters wanted venom filter before entering Nithrin. I had 1 filtering liver left, enough for 1 full-strength serving. The 4th silver coin stopped spinning beside the others. I looked at the 4 hunters. Then I looked toward the cold alcove. 1 filtering liver produces 1 full-strength serving, I said. I have 1 liver. The broad-shouldered woman rested both hands on the table. Tavra Seln. I lead this party. Her dark copper hair had been cut short enough to stay clear of the spear straps across her back. A pale scar divided the knuckles of her right hand. We do not split up, Tavra said. Name your price for 4 servings. This is not a price problem. I pushed the coins away from my side of the table. Dividing the liver will weaken the effect. It may also reduce how long it lasts. One of the men glanced toward Nithrin Gate. Our trap line is 30 minutes below the entrance. We need another 30 minutes to return. And if something delays you? Vespera asked. The man had no answer. Tavra looked at her instead. We abandon the traps and turn back, before the protection expires. Yes, I placed the 4 coins separately from the silver Karis had already paid. They remain yours until all 4 of you return. Tavra nodded. What do you need? Your metal cups. Clear space around the fire. No one touches the liver. We waited until an hour before dawn. The hunters slept in turns on our benches, while I rested for 3 hours beside the fire. When I woke, my calves still felt tight from spring step, but they no longer cramped when I stood. I brought the final filtering liver from the cold alcove. Its silver veins were thinner than those of the mature Riftmaw liver I had eaten, but the tissue remained firm. Dark patches marked the outer lobes where the organ had trapped venom during the Riftmaw's life. I cut those sections away, sealed them inside the waste jar, and kept only the clean center. One organ had to protect 4 people. I opened one of the 2 jars containing the Riftmaw venom glands. Vespera watched my hands. You are adding venom to their food? To a separate test. I poured boiled water into my smallest spare pot. Then I pierced the gland with the point of my narrow knife and allowed 1 black drop to fall. The water darkened immediately. I shaved a thin slice from the clean center of the liver and lowered it into the test pot. Its silver veins contracted. Black fluid entered them from the water. The liver slice darkened, tightened, and slowly pushed clear liquid back through its surface. The water gradually lost its color. The organ still functions after death, I said. The test slice turned black and stopped moving. I lifted it with my narrow knife, sealed it inside the waste jar, then stoppered the jar again. I scrubbed and boiled the blade before allowing it near the clean meal. The venom jar was sealed and returned to the separate stone shelf. I carried the test pot beyond the outer wall and dug a shallow disposal trench. The dark water went inside before I covered it with ash and soil well away from the cistern. I left the test pot outside for separate cleaning. The actual meal used my middle pot and fresh water. Barley went between 2 flat stones until it became coarse flour. I stirred it into the boiling water and added half an onion. The thick broth would keep the liver evenly distributed instead of allowing every piece to sink into 1 cup. I minced the remaining liver into 4 equal portions. Each portion entered the barley broth separately. The silver veins tightened once, then relaxed. After the 4th portion, golden words appeared above the pot. Shared course batch recognized. Residual Riftmaw venom none detected. 1 functional organ divided among 4 diners. Temporary trait available venom filter I. Expected duration 2 hours. Capacity reduced. Severe exposure may overwhelm the trait. This batch does not qualify as a personal monster meal. The message vanished. I skimmed 1 spoonful of broth from the surface, avoiding the liver pieces, and tested it for salt and bitterness. The broth was unpleasant but safe. 2 hours, I said. The protection is weaker than what saved Karis. 1 serious bite may consume most of it. Tavra removed 2 matching brass sand glasses from her pack. Each runs for 1 hour. She passed 1 to Vespera. You turn back when the first empties, Vespera said, and return before the second. If the second empties, Vespera replied, the protection is gone. Tavra met her gaze. We understand. I divided the broth among 4 metal cups. The hunters drank. All 4 expressions tightened at nearly the same moment. 1 man looked into his empty cup. You charged silver for that taste? I charged silver for what happens after it. A short message appeared as the final hunter swallowed. Shared course completed. 4 diners received venom filter I. Expected duration 2 hours. Tavra and Vespera turned their matching sand glasses together. The first grains began falling at the same moment the protection took effect. We crossed the checkpoint to Nithrin Gate. The old hunter wicket our expedition had used during the retreat was built into the eastern gate leaf. Its separate iron bar could only be removed from the checkpoint side. Vespera lifted the bar from its brackets. I pressed my palm against the stone beside the wicket. Fault sense reached 18 paces down the entry stairs. Nothing moved near the entrance. I nodded. Vespera opened the wicket. Cold dungeon air flowed into the checkpoint. Tavra passed through first with her spear ready. The three men followed behind her. Before descending, Tavra raised her running sand glass. 1 hour. Vespera checked the matching glass on our side. Turn back when it empties. Tavra nodded and descended. Vespera closed the wicket and replaced its iron bar. Karis sat on the nearest bench with his broken spear across his knees. You could have taken their silver even if the food failed. I prefer customers who remain alive long enough to return. He rubbed his swollen ankle. A strange business strategy. It may become popular. Vespera placed her sandglass on the table. I looked toward the thrumhorn remains inside the cold alcove. Its mature golden core still held its light. Vespera followed my gaze. No, I did not ask. You absorbed the Riftmaw core yesterday morning. Before that, you consumed 2 slate burrower cores in 1 day. 3 core linked integrations in less than 2 days. My body had survived them. That did not mean it wanted a 4th. Fault sense ends 18 paces below the wicket, I said. Once Tavra passes the first bend, we are blind. Vespera folded her arms. The thrumhorn's horn blinded fault sense. Its inner ears protected it from the same resonance. If those organs combine with my existing sense, I may be able to send a controlled vibration farther. You may also collapse while 4 people are beneath us. That is why Karis can watch the sandglass while you watch me. Karis lifted one hand. I was not included in this decision. You are now. Vespera's pale eyes remained on me. You slept 3 hours. I ate. I drank. My legs have stopped cramping. That does not erase the previous integrations. No, it gives me a better chance of surviving another. Her eyes narrowed, but she moved the broken chair and loose boards away from the fire. If you lose consciousness, the experiment ends. Agreed. I prepared everything before touching the core. 2 pots of clean water waited beside me. 1 contained salt. Barley porridge and ordinary cooked meat rested within reach. A folded blanket covered the floor beside the wall. Only after the room was ready did I return to the thrumhorn remains in the cold alcove. I had opened its skull during the previous day's butchering, but left the black horn membrane-protected inner ear organs and deepest neck muscles intact for a proper inheritance meal. The spiral horn surrounded a thin, vibrating membrane. Dense cartilage enclosed both inner ears, while thick neck muscles absorbed the force of every resonance burst. I cut 1 strip from the horn membrane, removed both inner ear organs, and sliced meat from the protected neck muscle. The mature golden core came from beneath its ribs and went beside the pan. I cooked the neck meat first. The ear cartilage softened slowly in barley water. The horn membrane curled when it touched the heat and produced a low hum against the pan. Karis looked toward the gate. That sound came from breakfast? Yes. I preferred the poison. I finished the meal. The core's golden light flowed into the pan and disappeared. Thrumhorn core, linked meal completed, balance adaptations, consolidated resonance equilibrium I. Resistance to vibration and disorientation increased. Fault sense synergy acquired echo pulse I. Send a controlled vibration through connected stone within 30 paces. Reveals movement, hollow spaces, and structural boundaries. May disrupt grounded targets with weaker physical stability. Cost inner ear strain, mineral loss, and vertigo. Repeated use may cause temporary hearing loss. Integration demand high. The room tilted. I planted both hands against the floor. The stone seemed to roll beneath them. My stomach tightened. Vespera caught my jaw before my head dropped. Look at me. Her face filled my vision. Her silver-gray eyes remained perfectly still while the gatehouse shifted around them. 1 loose black strand had escaped beside her cheek. Keep breathing, she said. I followed the movement of her shoulders. In, out. The spinning slowed. She kept one hand against my face and used the other to bring salted water to my mouth. I drank. Pressure tightened behind my ears, but the pain gradually eased. Vespera released my jaw only when I could sit without leaning against her. Still think 3 hours was enough rest? No. Good. I think preparation kept me conscious. That was not the lesson. Karis turned his attention toward the sand glass. I ate the porridge and ordinary meat until my hands stopped shaking. Echo pulse remained inside me like pressure waiting behind a closed door. I placed one palm against the floor. Vespera crouched beside me. One pulse. I heard the warning. You have a history of hearing warnings and treating them as suggestions. I released the pressure. A low vibration spread through the foundation. Fault sense answered immediately. The entire checkpoint returned to me as a hollow shape. The sealed cistern, the raised cold alcove, the ruined cooking pit, the thick gate leaves, the old road outside. The pulse reached beneath the western wall and revealed something new. A dry chamber sat 8 feet below us. A narrow stair had once connected it to the main room, but fallen stone sealed the entrance. The vibration continued through Nithrin Gate. 3 small creatures scattered beyond the first bend. No human movement registered within 30 paces. The pulse returned. Pain stabbed behind my eyes. A high ringing filled both ears. I lifted my hand. There is a dry chamber beneath the western wall. Karis looked toward the collapsed masonry. Large enough for beds? Large enough for storage? We can divide it after we open the stairs. Beds earn silver. So does keeping grain dry. Vespera touched 2 fingers beneath my left ear. No second pulse until the ringing stops. The first sandglass emptied. Vespera turned it over. Tavra had promised to turn her matching glass at the same moment below us. They should be heading back, Karis said. Vespera stood beside the wicket with her bow across her back and one hand resting on the iron bar. I cleaned the thrumhorn pan. Karis repaired the leather wrap around his spear. Half the second glass emptied. No knock came from below. The ringing in my ears had faded to a thin thread. Vespera looked toward me. One pulse. You said no second until the ringing stopped. Has it stopped? Almost. That is not an answer. I waited 3 more breaths. The final ringing disappeared. I pressed my palm against the gate stone. Echo pulse traveled down the steps. The first return brought only empty walls. Then 4 human rhythms entered the edge of my range. Running, one dragged a leg, a 5th body moved low behind them. Fast. They are coming. Vespera removed the iron bar. One injured, one limping. Something is behind them. Karis pushed himself upright and took position against the wall. Vespera knocked an arrow. 3 hard knocks struck the wicket. She pulled it open. The first hunter stumbled through while supporting another man beneath the shoulder. 2 punctures marked the injured hunter's calf. No black veins had spread beyond the bite. The divided venom filter was still holding. The third hunter entered with a bloodied drag rope wrapped around one wrist. Tavra backed through last with her spear pointed down the stairs. A larger rift maw lunged from the darkness behind her. I drove echo pulse through the threshold. The stone shuddered beneath the creature's forelegs. Its claws slipped apart. Momentum carried it chest first through the open wicket. Vespera drew to her cheek and released. The arrow entered one pale eye before the rift maw regained its footing. The creature slid fully across the threshold and stopped against the inner wall. Vespera slammed the wicket shut. Karis dropped the iron bar into place. Pain pulsed behind my ears. Something warm touched my neck. Vespera looked at my ear. A narrow line of blood had run from my left ear. She wiped it away with her thumb. 3 pulses. The third got them through the wicket. There will not be a 4th today. I did not argue. She pressed a strip of clean cloth beneath my ear until the bleeding stopped. The injured hunter sat beside the fire. I cleaned the punctures with boiled water and wrapped them in a strip of boiled filter cloth. His temporary venom filter had absorbed most of the toxin. The flesh remained swollen, but his pulse stayed strong. Tavra placed her empty cup on the table. One bite used nearly all the protection. That matches the warning. It was enough. I looked at the 4 coins still separated from our other money. Then the payment is mine. Tavra nodded. I placed the silver inside my field chest. 7 silver coins now belonged to us. Vespera pulled her arrow from the dead Riftmaw's eye. The shaft remained straight. 8 usable arrows returned to her quiver. I opened the adult Riftmaw. It held a mature amber core, a fully developed force storage node, 1 intact filtering liver, and a swollen venom gland. The liver entered the cold alcove. The core and amber node went onto the separate stone shelf. I packed the fresh venom gland inside the jar with the others and stoppered it tightly. We now had enough filtering tissue for 1 more 4-person diluted batch, with nothing left in reserve. Tavra removed the bloodied drag rope from her wrist. We killed a young Riftmaw near the trap line, she said. We tried bringing it back until the adult followed us. You dropped it, Vespera said. 30 paces below the first bend, we cut the rope and ran. Leaving the carcass had kept them alive. It could be recovered when we entered the dungeon under controlled conditions. Tavra accepted a pot of clean water. The trapline was untouched, she said. The dens were not. Vespera sat opposite her. What did you find? 3 nesting chambers. No living Riftmaws. Carcasses? Too many to count. Tavra reached into her pack and removed something wrapped in cloth. She placed it on the table. A black, hooked talon lay inside. It was longer than my palm and thick enough to split a Riftmaw's skull. Fresh blood darkened its broken base. We found this inside the largest den, Tavra said. The wall above it carried 3 claw marks higher than my head. Vespera picked up the talon. Her thumb followed the serrated inner edge. I have seen wounds from this shape below the 3rd descent. How did it reach the 1st floor? One hunter asked. That is what we need to learn. The talon explained the abandoned burrows, the slate burrowers forcing themselves toward the surface, the empty Riftmaw nests. Something from deeper inside Nithrin had moved into their territory and driven everything above it toward our gate. Tavra pushed her empty cup toward me. We want 4 more cups tomorrow. If he cannot walk, I will bring another hunter. I looked toward the single fresh liver in the cold alcove. I can repeat today's batch once. Vespera placed the black talon beside my pan. No one descends tomorrow without us. Tavra studied her. You intend to hunt whatever left that? I intend to find out how close it is before it reaches this door. I looked from the serrated talon to the sealed gate. Vespera tightened the strap across her bow. Tomorrow, she said, we follow it down. The black talon remained beside my pan while Tavra counted the people still fit to descend. The hunter bitten in the calf could stand, but his leg remained swollen. He stays here, Tavra said. The injured hunter opened his mouth. You nearly spent all your protection on 1 bite, she continued. Argue when you can walk without leaning on the table. He sat again. Tavra pointed toward the 2 uninjured men from her party. They come with us. That left 5 of us entering Nithrin. I already possessed permanent venom filter. Vespera, Tavra, and the 2 healthy hunters needed the 4 temporary servings. 4 cups, 1 liver. The numbers finally agreed. Tavra placed 4 fresh silver coins beside the black talon. Same condition as before. They become mine when everyone returns. Vespera stepped beside me and lifted the cloth covering my left ear. Her fingers pressed carefully beneath it. You keep touching my face, I said. I am checking your ear. Karis may misunderstand. He can limp somewhere else. Karis coughed into one hand. Vespera replaced the cloth. No blood. Does it still ring? Only when Karis speaks. That sounds like recovery, Tavra said. We used the remaining daylight to prepare the liver safely. I trimmed away the venom-darkened outer lobes, tested a narrow slice in a separate venom solution, and discarded the contaminated tissue inside the sealed waste jar. The clean center was divided into 4 equal portions. I placed them inside my scrubbed middle pot, sealed it with folded cloth and wire, then stored it in the cold alcove overnight. Nothing stayed beside the fire long enough to spoil. Tavra's injured hunter and Karis would guard the checkpoint. Karis's ankle had improved enough for him to stand without using the wall, though he still limped. Tavra's injured hunter had a working spear and a strong reason not to descend. Neither objected after Vespera explained what would happen if they opened the wicket for an unfamiliar knock. She established 3 firm knocks as our return signal. Any other pattern meant the wicket remained barred. An hour before dawn, I brought the chilled liver portions back to the fire. Barley thickened the clean broth. Half an onion made the smell less hostile. Nothing improved the taste. The 4 liver portions entered last. Golden words appeared above the pot. Shared course batch recognized. Residual rift maw venom, none detected. 4 reduced capacity servings available. Temporary trait venom filter I. Expected duration 2 hours. Severe exposure may overwhelm the trait. I served the meal immediately. Vespera, Tavra, and the 2 hunters finished their cups. Tavra handed one of her matching sand glasses to Karis. They turned both glasses as the final mouthful disappeared. Karis kept his on the table. Tavra secured the other to her belt. The first grains began falling together. Vespera checked her quiver. 8 usable arrows remained. The steel head from the arrow broken beneath the thrum horn stayed wrapped inside her belt pouch for later repair. I carried my long butcher knife, narrow knife, a coil of wire salt, 2 cloth strips, and 1 small pot. Vespera tied the wrapped black talon at her waist. We crossed to the hunter wicket. Karis lifted its iron bar from the checkpoint side. I pressed 1 palm against the stone. Fault sense reached down the stairs. Nothing large moved within 18 paces. My left ear still felt tender. Echo pulse remained unused. Karis opened the wicket. Cold air flowed over us. Vespera entered first. I followed, then Tavra and her 2 men. Karis shut the iron door behind us. The bar dropped back into place. Pale blue fungus traced the walls of Nitherin's first passage. Its glow revealed damp stairs, old blood and claw marks leading upward. Fresh blood and butchered meat had overwhelmed the old smell of rot. Vespera crouched near the first bend. 3 parallel scratches crossed the stone at shoulder height. The spacing matches the talon. Tavra raised her spear. The young riftmaw is farther ahead. We found the severed drag rope first. The young carcass lay against the wall 30 paces beyond the bend. 1 pale eye remained open, and a spear wound had entered behind its foreleg. Nothing had fed on it. Vespera's gaze lingered on the untouched carcass, and her fingers tightened around her bow. A scavenger should have found this overnight, I said. Something taught them to avoid the corridor. We tied Tavra's rope around the hind legs. I dragged the carcass toward the wicket while the others watched both ends of the passage. Burrower strength kept the weight manageable. Karis opened after Vespera gave the 3 agreed knocks. We pushed the carcass through. Hang it in the cold alcove, I told him. Do not cut the liver. Karis pulled it away from the wicket. What about the core? Underformed. Store it with the carcass. He untied Tavra's rope and passed it back through before we re-entered Nitherin. The young riftmaw's liver would not replace the mature one we had used. It might produce 2 weakened servings. That was still better than none. Karis barred the wicket again. Less than 1/4 of the first sand glass had fallen. Vespera let us pass the first bend. The passage widened into 3 connected nesting chambers. Broken bones covered the floors. Riftmaw skulls lay split along the same diagonal line. Some carcasses had been eaten, others had simply been killed. A normal predator fed until it was full. Whatever entered these chambers had continued long after hunger stopped mattering. Tavra pointed toward the highest wall. 3 black grooves cut through the stone above her head. Vespera removed the wrapped talon and held it beneath the lowest mark. The curve matched. We are close. Fault sense moved through the floor around us. 5 sets of human boots pressed against the stone. Water trickled through a narrow crack beneath the western wall. Small insects scattered under the bones. No large creature touched the ground nearby. I disliked that answer. Nothing heavy is moving on the floor, I whispered. Vespera examined the darkness above us. That does not mean nothing is here. One of Tavra's men lifted his spear toward the ceiling. The blue fungus stopped several feet above the floor. Beyond its glow, the stone disappeared into blackness. A faint scrape came from our right. Tavra turned. Nothing stood there. Another sound moved behind us. The second hunter raised his spear too late. A black shape dropped from the wall. Vespera struck him in the chest and knocked him aside. Hooked claws cut through the space where his neck had been. The creature landed without a sound. It resembled a mountain cat large enough to pull down a horse. Smoky gray bands crossed its black coat, and its long forelegs ended in serrated talons. One talon was missing from its left paw. Two pale green eyes reflected the blue fungus. Veilclaw Vespera said. Its outline seemed to dissolve whenever it stepped beyond the light. Third descent hunter. It attacks from walls. Watch the shadows, not the floor. The Veilclaw sprang sideways. Vespera knocked an arrow, drew, and released. The arrow entered its right shoulder. The monster twisted in the air, struck the wall with all four paws, and changed direction without touching the ground. Fault Sense lost it completely. It launched toward Tavra. She caught its chest on her spear shaft. The wood bent. The Veilclaw drove her backward across the bones. One of her men stabbed toward its flank. The creature released Tavra and climbed the wall before the spearhead arrived. Its wounded shoulder left a dark smear across the stone. Vespera moved beneath it. Do not chase the body. Watch where it must land. The Veilclaw vanished above the fungus. A loose stone fell behind me. I turned. Claws crossed my left forearm. My field coat split from wrist to elbow. Stone frame protected the bone, but 3 burning lines opened across my skin. The impact spun me toward the wall. The Veilclaw landed behind Tavra's second hunter. Fault Sense caught its weight for 1 instant. I released Spring Step. The stored force carried me across the chamber. This time I stopped where I intended. My shoulder struck the hunter and pushed him clear before the Veilclaw's jaws closed. The predator swiped toward my face. I blocked with the flat of my butcher knife. One hooked talon scraped sparks from the blade. Its missing claw left a gap in the attack. I drove my narrow knife into the broken talon socket. The Veilclaw screamed. It tore away before I reached the joint. My knife remained inside its paw. The creature climbed the wall again. Blood ran down my left hand. Vespera stepped beside me. Can you pulse once? My ear says no. What do you say? I watched the ledges above us. 1. Vespera knocked another arrow, but did not draw. Tavra and her men spread their spears across the chamber floor. They left only one open landing point near the western wall. The Veilclaw shifted above us. I could not see it. Vespera could. Her pale eyes followed something moving through the dark. Wait. The predator circled. A faint scrape crossed the ceiling. Wait. My left ear began ringing before I used the ability. The Veilclaw dropped toward the opening between the spears. Now, I drove Echo Pulse through the floor. The vibration climbed the western wall. Stone shuddered beneath the creature's landing paws. Its injured forelegs slipped. The Veilclaw struck the floor on one shoulder. Tavra drove her spear through its rear thigh and pinned the leg against the stone. Vespera drew to her cheek. Her arrow entered beneath the creature's ribs. The shaft cracked when the Veilclaw rolled. The Veilclaw staggered, ripped Tavra's spear free, and lunged toward Vespera. I released Spring Step. The ringing inside my ear sharpened into pain. My body crossed the gap before the Veilclaw reached her. I entered beneath its raised foreleg and drove my butcher knife through the opening behind its shoulder. The blade struck a rib. Burrower strength pushed it past the bone. The point entered the heart. The Veilclaw carried me 2 steps before its legs failed. Its weight drove me onto one knee. The black body struck the floor beside me. Silence filled the nesting chamber. Vespera kept her bow raised until the creature stopped breathing. Tavra pulled her spear free. One of her men sat against the wall, staring at the claw marks where his throat had nearly been. The other checked Tavra's ribs. She had bruised them against the spear shaft, but could breathe without sharp pain. I pulled my butcher knife from the veil claw. My left ear rang. No blood followed the pulse. That counted as improvement. Vespera crossed to me and took my injured arm. The 3 cuts were shallow, but blood had soaked the split sleeve. She poured clean water over them. You said 1 pulse. I used 1. You also used spring step twice. That was not part of the agreement. It will be next time. She wrapped the cloth tightly around my forearm. You keep finding reasons to put your hands on me, I said. Vespera tied the bandage and pulled the knot hard enough to hurt. This one was your idea. Tavra looked away with suspicious speed. The first sandglass emptied. She turned it over. We have 1 hour. Vespera recovered the arrow from the Veilclaw's shoulder and returned it to her quiver. The second shaft had split beneath the creature's ribs, so she removed its steel head and stored it beside the Thrumhorn arrowhead. 7 usable arrows and 2 spare steel heads remained. I retrieved my narrow knife from the broken talon socket. The black talon Vespera had carried fit the missing joint exactly. The predator that emptied the first-floor nests lay dead at our feet. The route it had used to reach them waited behind the western nesting chamber. A circular stone grate had collapsed inward. Beyond it, a vertical shaft descended through the floor. Fresh claw marks covered both sides. Vespera dropped a pebble into the opening. We heard it strike stone once, then again. The final impact came from far below. An old ventilation shaft, Tavra said. It reaches past the second descent, Vespera replied. The Veilclaw had climbed through the broken grate. Fault sense traced the upper walls of the shaft, but could not find its bottom. I did not use Echo Pulse again. Only 1 set of large claw marks led upward. None returned below. The Veilclaw had probably been alone. The open shaft could bring something else. We need to seal this. With what? One hunter asked. Stone iron and enough people to move both. Tavra looked toward the dead predator. After we leave, we wrapped the Veilclaw's body in the recovered drag rope and tied its front legs. Tavra's 2 men carried the rear half using their spear shafts. I took the front with burrower strength. Vespera walked ahead with an arrow nocked. The second sand glass still held 1/4 of its sand when we reached the wicket. Karis opened after the 3 agreed knocks. We passed the carcass through. Everyone entered before the temporary venom filter expired. Karis barred the gate. Tavra turned her nearly empty sand glass onto the table. No bites. The payment becomes mine. She nodded toward the 4 silver coins. I placed them inside my field chest. 11 silver coins now belong to us. Vespera rested her bow against the table. 7 usable arrows remained in her quiver. I examined the young Riftmaw Karis had hung inside the cold alcove. Its filtering liver was small and pale. The organ could support 2 diluted cups or 1 weak full serving. Its force storage node had not fully developed. The dull core held no usable inheritance. I stored the liver and discarded the incomplete node with the core. The Veilclaw required more care. Its mature core was dark indigo with a thin silver ring moving beneath the surface. Transparent membranes covered its inner eyes. Thick pads beneath its paws softened every landing, while narrow tendons along the spine allowed it to twist in the air. Its black meat smelled cleaner than Riftmaw flesh. I placed the mature core eye membranes, paw pads, and spinal tendons inside the cold alcove beside the unused mature Riftmaw core and force storage node. The rest of the Veilclaw became meat hide claws and bone. The recovered black talon went with the other claws. Vespera cleaned the cuts on my forearm again. Karis watched her retie the bandage. You bleed near her surprisingly often. Vespera tightened the knot. I decided Karis's recovery had progressed too far. We ate, drank, and rested through the afternoon. My left ear stopped ringing before sunset. The cuts beneath my sleeve still burned whenever I flexed my hand. I cooked an ordinary portion of Veilclaw meat first. The mature indigo core remained untouched inside the cold alcove. The meat was lean and faintly sweet. Living Feast responded after the final bite. Veilclaw meal completed. Minor permanent adaptation low light focus increased. Minor permanent adaptation balance during rapid directional changes increased. The blue fungus outside the wicket would have seemed dim the previous morning. Now I could distinguish cracks between distant stones. I prepared a second pot for Vespera Tavra and the two healthy hunters. Shared course granted them a weaker version. Shared course completed. Temporary adaptation low light focus. Expected duration 3 hours. Karis extinguished all but one fat lamp. The temporary low light focus allowed Vespera Tavra and the two hunters to work beyond the flame's reach. Karis remained beside the single lamp, sorting removed stones and passing tools from the lit side. The injured hunter rested on one of the benches. Tavra offered labor instead of another coin. Echo Pulse had shown me where the buried stair began beneath the collapsed western wall. We removed loose stones by hand and used the hatchet rope and spare slate burrower claws as wedges. By nightfall, the upper 3 steps had been uncovered. Cold, dry air moved through the gap below. The hidden chamber remained sealed by one heavy slab. "We can open it tomorrow," Tavra said. "We enter the ventilation shaft tomorrow," Vespera replied. "Then open it tonight." No one argued with her. The rope went around the slab. Burrower's strength held one end while Tavra's men pulled the other. Vespera reclaimed her bow before guiding the stone away from the exposed stair. Karis kept the lamp raised from the safe side. The slab shifted. Dust rolled through the main room. A dark opening appeared beneath the western wall. Vespera entered first with her bow ready. The chamber beyond had once been an old guard store. Stone shelves lined one side. 4 raised sleeping platforms occupied the other. The roof remained intact. No water reached the floor. Karis looked at the platforms. Beds, stone platforms, add blankets. "We have one, then 1 bed and 3 opportunities." Tavra walked between the shelves. Dry grain storage, sleeping space, a second room behind the gate. The last detail mattered most. The chamber doubled the usable size of our checkpoint. It also gave us somewhere to protect food from smoke, rain, and animals. We moved the barley, beans, onions, and sealed dry ingredients onto the shelves. The cold alcove remained reserved for meat and monster organs. My field chest with our 11 silver coins went beneath the lowest platform. More than a day had passed since the Thrumhorn inheritance. After a full meal and several additional hours of rest, I prepared the Veilclaw core-linked dish. Vespera sat across from me. 2 pots of water, salted broth, ordinary meat, and a folded blanket waited nearby. "You used Echo Pulse once," she said. My ear stopped ringing. "Your arm is cut. My stomach works." A working stomach does not close a cut arm. I placed the indigo core beside the pan. The shaft is open. The next creature may not touch the ground long enough for fault sense. Vespera looked toward the black hide stretched beside the wall. "You want its eyes and feet. I also want the part that let it turn in the air." "Of course you do." I cooked the transparent eye membranes in clear broth. The paw pads softened over low heat. Thin strips from the spinal tendons went into the pan with the remaining Veilclaw meat. The indigo core pulsed beside the fire. I finished the meal. Its silver ring dissolved first. The dark center followed. Veilclaw core linked meal completed. Low light adaptations consolidated night sight eye. See clearly in near darkness. Sudden bright light may cause temporary pain. Compatible organ trait acquired soft step eye. Reduce sound and vibration while moving at controlled speed. Spring step synergy acquired veil step eye. Release 1 short burst with minimal sound and a harder to track visual trace in dim light. Cost breath restriction calf strain and temporary light sensitivity. Integration demand moderate. Cold pressure spread behind my eyes. My pupils tightened. The fire became painfully bright. I covered my face. Vespera smothered the nearest fat lamp and banked the cooking fire beneath a layer of ash. Darkness settled over the checkpoint. It did not remain dark for me. The grain sack's table doorway and every strand of Vespera's black braid appeared in clear shades of gray. My calves tightened, but no cramp followed. I drank salted water and ate ordinary meat until the pressure eased. Vespera stood near the far wall, walked toward me. I moved slowly. Soft step changed the way my feet met the stone. The floor gave almost nothing back through fault sense. Karis leaned forward on the bench. I cannot hear him. Vespera could. Her head turned before I reached her. Better. I stopped 3 feet away. Now the burst. The room remained dim. I stored force inside my legs and released veil step. The distance vanished. I stopped behind Vespera without striking the wall. My movement produced only a faint rush of air. Her curved knife rested against my ribs before I finished smiling. Still predictable? I asked. To me, she lowered the blade. That sounded almost affectionate. It was a warning. Tavra examined the empty space I had crossed. Hunters would pay for that ability. They cannot receive core-linked traits. Vespera returned her knife to its sheath. They can buy the night vision. Karis relit the fat lamp once the test ended. He placed a rough cabinet plank across the table. You need a name before Tavra tells the northern camp where to find you. I looked at the repaired roof iron grate benches, hidden chamber cold alcove, and monster hooks surrounding my cooking station. Only a few days earlier, the place had been an abandoned checkpoint. Now it had customers' food sleeping space, and a kitchen capable of lending monster traits. What would you call it? I asked. Karis looked toward the sealed venom jars. The poisoned cook, no, Vespera said. Tavra tapped the wooden spoon against the plank. The gate table. No, I said. Vespera picked up one cleaned Riftmaw fang from the storage shelf and placed it beside the spoon. The fang and ladle. I looked at her. We do not own a ladle. You will. I drew my narrow knife and carved the name into the plank. The fang and ladle Tavra's 2 hunters hung the sign above the reinforced outer door. 6 lanterns appeared along the northern road before the final nail went in. Vespera stood beneath the new sign, with one hand resting on her bow. The arriving hunters saw the smoke, the benches, and the veilclaw meat hanging beneath the vent. One raised a pouch of coins. Are you serving food? Vespera opened the door. We are now.